What is the difference between 2014 and 19? Well, I would say that now the organization of elections is not and must not be the business as usual. And when I met in April after Cambridge Analytica case, the electoral commissioners from all the member states, we had a good debate, but it was quite clear that there was not enough understanding that now the situation is much more complex, that we have to be more careful about data protection, about the protection against foreign propaganda, that we have to be much more resilient against the cybercrime, and that the situation now needs to be much more careful and more mobilized to protect the free elections. In principle, what we want and what we want to achieve are four things: to protect the people against the manipulation and make sure that their private data will not be stolen and abused. Here again, I have to make a clear link to Cambridge Analytica case, where this has been proven that this happened to our people, also in Europe. The second thing, online political advertising, which is on the rise. We have figures which show that more and more the political parties are advertising online. So it must be transparent, including the funding, and in fact what we say is that the rules which apply offline must also apply online. The third thing, we want the elections to be protected against cybercrime and cyber attacks, and the fourth thing, we want the European people to be more resilient towards disinformation and propaganda, which means to actively fight against disinformation without introducing any kind of censorship. This was our aim. How do we want to do this? Of course, the success of this will be very much dependent on a good cooperation with the member states and on the efficient action on the side of the member states. That's why we are recommending them to pay proper attention to the elections from all those aspects which I outlined a minute before, and we also want to coordinate and communicate and have a proper dialogue on the European level, so we ask the member states to give us the contact points for such communication. We plan to have 2 meetings, one in January and one in April next year. Myself and my colleagues and the Commission, we find ourselves quite authorized to do that and to invite the Member States for such common work, because we studied very thoroughly what happened under the Facebook Cambridge Analytica case. Now we see what are the risks and threats, and I think that it's the proper thing to share this knowledge with the Member States and to mobilize our powers. Because we are kind of inside the topic of security, I am available for your questions if you want to ask something about the strengthened rules for anti-money laundering, on European Public Prosecutor's Office, which should in the future, if we have unanimous consent of the member states, deal also with terrorist criminal offences, and of course also the new proposal to delete terrorist content from online sphere, but this is more the topic of my colleague Julian King. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Commissioner King, please.
Indeed, I'll start on this challenge of terrorist content online, which is a real problem which requires urgent action. Every single one of the attacks in Europe over the last 18 months or so had an online dimension, either through incitement to carry out an attack, sometimes instructions on how to do it, and often glorification afterwards. And terrorist content is too present on too many platforms. Europol are working with more than 150 platforms in trying to tackle terrorist content online. The UK Home Office did a study last year, and they found that Daesh and their supporters were using more than 400 platforms to push out this material. And there's been a shift in the nature of the attacks that we've been facing. We've discussed that here before. We've been facing more so-called lone actor attacks. And I'm afraid that too often the people who are carrying out those attacks have been radicalized by exposure to online content. There's a recent case in France where an individual was radicalized after sitting alone in his bedroom, watching hours and hours of video to the point where he rejected his family, his friends, his previous values, and sought to carry out an attack. Fortunately, in that case, the French authorities got to him before he was able to do so. And the potential damage caused by this terrorist content rises dramatically every hour it remains online, as it spreads from platform to platform. 3/4 of all the links to Daesh-sponsored content are shared within 4 hours of release. So what are we proposing to do? What are we proposing today that is different? We are proposing to create 3 new obligations. First, a new instrument, a new legal instrument, removal orders. We're making it mandatory for platforms to act within 1 hour when they receive a removal order from the police or judicial authorities and take the material in question down. Secondly, if your platform is being used to spread terrorist content, then you will have an obligation to make use of proactive measures to detect content and prevent it from either being uploaded in the first place or reappearing. And third, an obligation on the member states, that the member states need to have a dedicated law enforcement capacity in place with the resources to effectively detect terrorist content and to issue removal orders. Now, none of this is anywhere near censorship. We're not talking about some grey area of difficult judgment. Terrorist content, material that incites or advocates committing terrorist acts, promotes or glorifies a terrorist group, or provides instruction in how to carry out an attack, is illegal. It's illegal online just as it is illegal offline, and it needs to be removed. Even so, we will make sure that there are robust safeguards in place with clear rules about transparency and effective complaint mechanisms and the provision for judicial recourse if necessary. And while we expect the vast majority of platforms will cooperate, we do need effective sanctions. And that's why we will work with the member states to establish a system of sanctions, and in the case of systematic failure to comply with removal orders, I mean, not just once, but repeatedly, then there is a provision for hosting service providers to be fined up to 4% of their global turnover. Terrorist content online is as Vera was just saying, one part of a spectrum of cyber and cyber-enabled threats that we face. And the other important theme that we're talking about today is measures to reinforce the security of our electoral processes. As Vera's just said, our elections, indeed our democratic institutions, have been targeted. There are established cases where they have been targeted through hacks, leaks, fake news, and the misuse of mined personal data. And so we need to take action to better protect against cyber attacks, against disinformation, and to protect personal data. Vera was talking in particular about data. Maria will say a bit more about some of the other challenges. But together, we are taking a series of measures to reinforce our cybersecurity and resilience, to tackle disinformation and fake news, and to reinforce the rules around personal data. And we want, in view of the European elections and indeed the national elections that are coming up in the months ahead, all of the actors to work together. so that we are proposing that member states create election cooperation networks to work on these issues. And in addition to the meetings that Vera mentioned, we will be organising a high-level conference here in Brussels next month, October, the middle of October, to bring together experts and decision makers from across the Union and beyond to identify concrete ways to prevent cyber and cyber-enabled threats to our elections. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Gabriel, please.
Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Tout d'abord, merci à mes collègues Vera et Julian pour leur message très clair sur les élections et sur le contenu illégal terroriste. Aujourd'hui, c'est un véritable travail d'équipe que nous vous présentons. Quant à moi, je me concentrerai sur un aspect qui est celui de la cybersécurité. D'abord, je voudrais rappeler qu'en termes de cybersécurité, en matière de cybersécurité, nous avons indéniablement fait des progrès depuis des années. Mais les choses se sont accélérées depuis un an. Souvenez-vous, dans cette salle même, l'année dernière, le 17 septembre, nous avons présenté notre proposition quant au renforcement du mandat de l'agence ENISA et quant à la création d'un certain système de certification européen. Ce matin même, à Strasbourg, j'ai participé au premier trilogue avec le Parlement et le Conseil. Donc, nous avons clairement montré qu'en moins d'un an, nous sommes capables d'avancer. Et donc, aujourd'hui, la proposition que nous faisons est un pas majeur en avant. Aujourd'hui, nous voudrions faire passer nos efforts à un niveau supérieur et renforcer la cybersécurité de l'Union européenne. Et c'est la raison pour laquelle, aujourd'hui, nous présentons devant vous d'abord la création d'un réseau de centres de compétences en matière de cybersécurité en Europe et la création d'un centre européen de compétences. D'abord, il faudrait aussi se rappeler le contexte, l'expertise, l'expérience dont nous disposons en Europe, il est indéniable. Mais aujourd'hui, nous devons le mettre en avant et faire en sorte de tirer les bénéfices de cette expérience. C'est pour cela que nous proposons que tous les acteurs de la cybersécurité en Europe puissent se rencontrer dans le réseau et ainsi rassembler le savoir-faire européen dont nous disposons. Ainsi, la vision sera pilotée par un seul centre de coordination dans chaque État membre qui, lui, participera à la création de ce réseau européen qui se vaudra une communauté de talents, de compétences, de connaissances et des entités qui possèdent des compétences spécialisées en matière de cybersécurité. De fait, selon un mapping effectué par la Commission européenne, il y a déjà plus de 660 entités dans toute l'Union qui remplissent les conditions pour rejoindre ce réseau. Beaucoup de ces entités ont d'ailleurs postulé pour participer à notre projet pilote tel que nous l'avons annoncé et qui est doté de 50 millions d'euros. Ce projet pilote débutera en novembre. Ensuite, les efforts que je viens de mentionner vont se voir renforcés par un élément clé de notre proposition, le nouveau centre de compétences européen. Cette structure qui rassemblera, selon notre proposition à Bruxelles, la discussion se poursuivra avec les co-législateurs, environ 80 effectifs d'ici 2023, mobilisera toutes les ressources disponibles pour nous assurer que l'Europe reprendra sa place de leader mondial en matière de cybersécurité. Les ressources du centre de compétences viendront du programme Digital Europe que nous avons proposé en mai dernier et du programme de recherche Horizon Europe. De même, nous proposons que les États membres rejoignent l'initiative et contribuent au budget global du centre, le but d'atteindre les 4 milliards d'euros. Mais nous ne nous arrêtons pas là. Il est indispensable que le centre de compétences européen puisse aussi compter avec un partenariat solide avec le monde privé. C'est pourquoi nous cherchons activement des investissements de l'industrie et d'autres partenaires privés. Sous un conseil de direction composé des représentants des États membres et de la Commission, le centre va coordonner les activités et va financer en partie ce réseau, ainsi que toute la communauté des compétences. Encore plus important, le centre financera des projets de recherche et innovation, ainsi que des projets de déploiement des technologies. Enfin, le centre sera en capacité de mobiliser des marchés publics pour son opérabilité. Les projets que le Centre de compétences européen soutiendra à partir de 2021 vont englober la recherche, le déploiement et les infrastructures communes. Du côté de la recherche, le Centre privilégiera des projets sur de nouvelles méthodes de cryptage résistant même aux ordinateurs quantiques du futur ou encore des projets visant à développer les objets connectés. Du côté déploiement, nous ciblerons des projets d'expérimentation visant à soutenir les entreprises qui cherchent à intégrer les nouvelles technologies de la cybersécurité dans leurs produits. Et enfin, concernant les infrastructures communes, le Centre de compétences européen financera un réseau sécurisé de communication entre les autorités des États membres ou encore une base de données universelle de vulnérabilité de logiciels qui serait utile et accessible pour tous les chercheurs. Ainsi, comme vous le voyez, la structure que nous proposons aujourd'hui permettra une meilleure coordination et collaboration parmi les différents acteurs de la cybersécurité en Europe. Notre ambition est de doter l'Union européenne de capacités industrielles et technologiques renforcées et de lui permettre, dans l'avenir, d'occuper une place de premier plan dans les solutions de cybersécurité de prochaines générations. Il en va de notre souveraineté numérique. Merci.
Madame la Commissaire, before going to your questions, let me just remind you of the press material. There's ample press material out there already since yesterday we published and also outside. And now let's go to your questions. If you could please introduce yourself as usual and also tell us to which of the three commissioners you would like to ask the question. Please, Patty.
Paddy Smith, Irish Times, and Commissioner King. Really, I think you're probably the person I want to ask the question. Two questions. One is simply a technical question about the how the takedown operation will take place. You say that an hour from notification. Is it proposed that certain bodies will be given a specific power to notify? In other words, it's not just me ringing up Facebook and saying you should take this down. Is it proposed that specific bodies would have that power? And secondly, if this is a proposal for legislation, given the way the European Union works, it's extremely unlikely that the legislation would get through before the European elections next year, or within a reasonable space of time. Have you any indication from the online companies that they would be willing to operate a system like this on a voluntary basis, pending the implementation of the legislation?
Shall I? Yeah. First of all, half a step back. We're not starting from zero on this. There is an established framework of voluntary cooperation at the moment, which has got us to a certain point, and that will continue. What we're saying is that we need to go further. And these are the concrete measures that we are proposing in, as you say, a piece of legislation. The removal order, a new instrument that will require action when it is served upon a platform, will be served by law enforcement or judicial authorities in a member state. On the timing, well, we need to go fast on this. So we are putting this down now in the hope, expectation that working with the European Parliament and working with the Council, we can get an agreement in this mandate before the elections. And we've set quite a short period for coming into force of 6 months. So we really do need to get on with this. We're responding not only to invitations to work harder on this subject from various law enforcement authorities, but also to calls that have come from different governments in the Council and indeed from the European Parliament. So I hope that they will work with us to get this done fast.
Thank you very much. Jean-Pierre.
Bonjour, Jean-Pierre Strobens du Monde. Une question à Mme Jourová et peut-être aussi au commissaire King, puisque ça concerne le terrorisme. À propos de votre projet blanchiment d'argent, on nous avait dit jusqu'à présent que l'Europe disposait déjà de la réglementation la plus sévère. Elle doit visiblement être renforcée. Effectivement, une série d'affaires récemment, celle de l'affaire ING aux Pays-Bas, l'affaire d'une filiale la filiale estonienne d'une banque danoise, ont montré que les contrôles étaient assez peu opérants dans une série d'établissements. L'enquête aux Pays-Bas a montré par exemple que pour 11 millions de transactions quotidiennes, ING faisait 3 contrôles, c'est peut-être assez léger. Donc, sans doute les mesures que vous proposez étaient nécessaires, mais comment sont-elles réellement appliquées? Comment seront-elles contrôlées surtout pour ce qui est du contrôle organisé par les banques elles-mêmes? Et parfois de très grandes banques comme ING d'ailleurs.
I will start. Well, we are gradually strengthening the framework. I am doing it by updating directives on anti-money laundering, where we achieved a lot of progress, and now we want the member states to implement them, especially the fourth anti-money laundering in full. And now in the recent proposal, we also needed to address the weaknesses which are in that supervisory framework. So this is exactly what we have adopted this week. And as you said, these are also the reactions on the revelations about Pilatus and Danske and some other banks. So we are trying to get rid of the loopholes, because the criminals operating in international sphere, they love loopholes, and of course they are not mistaken finding them. So we want the member states to do their job in supervising the suspicious transactions and suspicious people, if I can simplify it like that. These rules are foreseen in our anti-money laundering legislation. As you know, that we adopted the 5th anti-money laundering directive, which will come into force at the beginning of 2020. And here we are strengthening transparency. We are making the final beneficiaries registers fully public. We are strengthening the rules of transparency for trust. We are also covering the cyber currencies. We are inviting other obliged entities other than banks to cooperate with the financial investigation units at the member state level. And as I said, these are all very useful things, but they have to be applied and fully done in practice. So we are pushing the member states to do better. We are now running 16 infringement procedures as for the 4th anti-money laundering directive, and we are in constant dialogue with the member states because our aim is not to organize the infringement procedures. Our aim is to have the bulletproof system in the EU. And coming back to this week's proposal, this is focused on the strengthening of the European Banking Authority, which with its powers and staff, the European Banking Authority will become the lead agency when it comes to the prevention and the management of the anti-money laundering risks. And of course, again, a very strong cooperation with the member states is foreseen. To understand the strengths and competence, it's important to stress that in case of some failures at the level of the member state, as a last resort, there is the new competence for the EBA to act. And you asked about how we are monitoring the situation in the member states. For the first time, the European Banking Authority was doing the thorough analysis on what happened in case of Pilatus Bank. So we are using all the instruments which we have.
There is a security, right? There is a security dimension to work. We do it
way together. There is obviously a link to
serious crime.
there's also a terrorist dimension. Even if what we've seen recently are a spate of so-called, don't like the term, low-cost attacks, there is still funding involved in terrorism, and following the money is one of the proven effective ways of trying to unpick terrorist plots, and if the worst happens, finding the perpetrators. So some of the elements that Vera has just mentioned are very important from a security point of view. Law enforcement access to financial information and effective cooperation between financial intelligence units across Europe so that we use that financial intelligence to go after serious and organized criminals and, on some occasions, terrorists. We need to implement what's been agreed. We also need to look to see whether there's more that needs to be done. And that's something that we'll be discussing in the weeks ahead. I just note that in the US, they have a system for tracking terrorist finance that is more effective than what we are able to do at the moment in Europe. And I think for me, there's a question about whether we need to look whether there are some lessons we can learn from the way the US use financial intelligence to tackle some security challenges.
Thank you very much. So next, the list will be Athanasius.
Athanasius with CNA. Back in the Cold War era, where things were a little bit more clear-cut and we knew who the enemy was and who was interfering with electoral processes, there was always a, let's say, a retaliatory capacity of the West. Should the EU build such a capacity in the modern, let's say, information warfare era? Because some security experts argue that what happened in the Cold War was there was a deterrence because the West had nukes as well. It was not only the East that had nukes. And at some point, when they realized the danger, they started talking to each other. But in this case, some would argue that the West, we don't have a, let's say, information warfare deterrence capacity right now. And the other side has nothing to talk about with us. So should the EU build such a capacity? And if so, did you ever consider it in your pursuit for these proposals you're proposing today? Thanks.
Would like to go first.
Totality and Cold War from the perspective of the Bolshevik regime.
Oh, I don't know, you didn't go to boarding school.
Well, yeah. And Maria, and congratulations, she is too young. So I will try to reply. Of course, this is the new kind of war, which is now running through the digital sphere. The fact that it's in the digital world, it doesn't mean that it doesn't pose big risk to the real world. So these worlds are very, very much, and in this case, painfully interconnected. I remember very well the doctrine of the totalitarian Soviet Union propaganda, and it was, you must know who your enemy is. And the second was, and I think I said it last week here, 100 times repeated, lie is a true, becomes a true. And we don't want to use these instruments. I think that it's important to clarify what we stand for and be more concrete about where we see our enemies. The enemies for me are those who will celebrate if we will fail in Europe, also in case of the next year's election. And we have to fight against lying, which is not illegal, by telling the people the truth. I don't have any better recipe. And we have to be coherent, and we have to say this clearly to the people in Europe and ask them for cooperation, to engage more critical thinking and to be more resilient against the propagandist waves and pressures which are being imposed on them through online. And of course, this is in one package where I have my first instinct after what I heard about Cambridge Analytica case. I exactly felt like in the 1988 when I realized, well, what about the elections in my country? There is no way for free choice of people. It was brainwashing, it was permanent propaganda, it was the pressure. I wanted to go, or I planned to go to United Kingdom in 1986. It was as if now I want to go to Mars. And there was a person who was spying me in the corridor in my house. And he told me that after 2 years, when he got drunk, under the Christmas tree, he told me, do you know, 2 years ago I was spying you. I knew everything about you. So these were the methods of the communists, or those days communists and totalitarian regime. How far are we now? Now we use similar methods by means of fantastic new modern technologies. I don't think we should be passive. We have to stop or diminish the impact of this. And this is pretty dangerous. So that's why we are doing what we are doing.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Gabriel, would you like to add something?
Aussi, rajouter sur la question à quel degré nous sommes cyber-résilients, est-ce que nous sommes préparés? D'abord, je voudrais le rappeler, nous ne partons pas de rien. Nous avons d'abord la directive Nice. Dans la directive Nice, il est prévu qu'il y a une cellule dans chaque État membre qui peut réagir très rapidement à toute attaque, 24 heures et 7 jours par semaine. Ensuite, je rappelle notre proposition d'avoir un mandat renforcé de l'agence ENISA qui, elle, a l'expertise et peut assister les États membres, peut rapidement les aider à remédier aux vulnérabilités. Nous avons également proposé le fameux blueprint, un mécanisme de coordination européen en cas d'attaque à large échelle. Et nous avons aussi proposé la création de ce réseau de centres de compétences où, grâce au projet pilote qui sera mis en œuvre en novembre. Il est vrai, nous faisons encore face à des défis. L'Union européenne continue à être un importateur de produits et de services. Nous avons encore une certaine dépendance de fournisseurs non européens, mais en même temps, nous disposons d'une expertise, nous disposons d'une expérience. J'ai cité les 660 organisations qui sont prêts et qui sont là avec leur expertise. Donc aujourd'hui, l'enjeu est de transformer cette expertise et cette expérience en produits et services commercialisables, d'avoir l'Union européenne qui pourra couvrir l'ensemble de la chaîne de valeur de la cybersécurité. Et pour cela, il nous faut deux choses. D'une part, remédier à la fragmentation actuelle, que les différentes communautés se parlent. C'est aussi visible dans la proposition sur les élections. Les autorités nationales qui sont en charge des élections, je dirais analogues, vont pouvoir discuter avec les autorités qui sont en charge de la protection des données. Ils vont pouvoir coordonner leurs actions. Et d'autre part, il nous faut plus d'investissement. Et c'est pour cela qu'on propose le centre. Le centre, il vise à remédier à cette coopération qui doit être renforcée entre les différentes communautés, de la communauté de recherche et les industries jusqu'aux dimensions civiles et militaires, et ensuite de remédier à la nécessité de plus d'investissement que nous proposons que le centre fasse via la mise en œuvre du financement tel que prévu dans le programme Digital Europe ou encore le Horizon Europe. Donc, je pense que des pas concrets sont faits en avant. Il faudrait continuer dans cette direction-là. Plus de coopération, plus d'échanges de données, plus de rapidité, d'être là 24 heures, 7 jours sur 7 et de renforcer la confiance entre les États membres grâce aux mécanismes que nous maintenons. Tout simplement, ce qu'on leur apporte, c'est de clarifier ceci juridiquement et d'avoir des mécanismes qui permettent à ce que cette coopération soit efficace.
You first.
Yuri Shiko, Deutsche Welle. To understand what you are proposing on the elections, because as I understand it's mostly about the national authorities, so do I understand what the Commission is concretely proposing is first of all to facilitate the dialogue and cooperation between the national authorities, and the second one to create this center of competence and network of center competences. Are those only these two measures, or didn't I understand you correctly? I'm asking on elections. Thank you.
Member states should send their contact point. It's on them how to who will be sent to this common work. As I said before, there are 4 aspects: data protection, political advertising and funding, cyber security, and the forces fight against propaganda. And it's all these things are on the member states to manage. But we are convinced that it's good to cooperate on these matters on European level, and that we have a lot of good information to share. So at this moment, we want to mobilize the attention of the member states who are exclusively responsible for organizing the elections, and to come to a common understanding and common plan how to prevent our elections against these negative risks or these negative developments. The second is Maria, because that's another thing.
Merci Vera. Vera a insisté sur la protection des données, c'est très clair. L'autre message, c'est la transparence. La transparence sur la publicité politique, c'est lié aussi à notre travail sur la désinformation en ligne. Je rappelle que d'ici la fin du mois, le code de conduite sur lequel nous travaillons après notre communication au mois d'avril me sera présenté. Donc, ce sont deux grands accents sur la transparence et la protection des données comme des valeurs pour notre société démocratique, et tout ceci aura des répercussions directes lorsque ce n'est pas respecté. Dans la proposition, il est clairement dit, si la protection des données n'est pas assurée, si les partis ne sont pas conformés aux exigences, à ce moment, il y aura une amende de 5% par rapport à leur budget global annuel, et ils n'auront pas la possibilité de postuler pour un financement européen pour l'année qui suit l'amende. Donc le message est très clair. Pour nous, la protection des données, la transparence, pour pouvoir permettre un débat informé au moment des élections, ce sont des valeurs non négociables.
Okay, thank you. And please.
It's still about elections, but do you think that these measures are enough? Because basically our recommendations and also about the amendment to the political parties, it's only at European level, and the sanction that they cannot ask for EU funding will be for the year the next year, so basically after the European elections. So basically the only very stringent EU law, it's GDPR. There are not really very strong safeguards put in place with these measures.
For the sphere of elections, the EU doesn't have the competence to legislate. So that's why we use the instrument of communication and recommendation. We would do it anyway, even if we have the competence, because time is running and we have now 250 days before the election. So we had to hurry up, and we came with a proposal which I'm convinced is necessary and proportionate. So this was all we could do. I hope it will work in practice for the European elections, but also, as you indicated, for the national elections. So I think that the member states could also take a lesson from what was happening before a British referendum or in the United States, and to be more resilient when it comes to their national elections. But this is, again, I have to repeat, exclusive competence of the state.
Thank you very much. So there's a couple of more on here.
Paul Vorreiter, Deutschlandfunk. I guess this goes out to Mr. King. On behalf of the terrorist content deletion, I was wondering what will happen to small businesses that may not have the capabilities to provide a 24/7 service, and will not be able to react within 1 hour after our removal inquiry has reached them.
Whole ecosystem of platforms. It's not just the big platforms that are used to try and traffic this kind of online terrorist content. That's why we want to make sure that The 1 hour requirement is following being served by law enforcement or judicial authorities with a removal order. It's the law enforcement and judicial authorities that have taken the judgment about the content. And the platform, whatever size it is, even if it's a one-man operation, will be bound to react. And they can react because we're not asking them in those circumstances, unlike some other circumstances, to run any difficult processes or reach separate judgments according to their own rules and their own codes of conduct. They're receiving a legal order from law enforcement. Because that's rather a strong measure, we are putting in place very strong safeguards so that if there is a problem, then there is a complaint mechanism and it's all done in full transparency. So that's part of the answer. The other part of the answer is that we need to help platforms of all sizes to be equipped to run proactive measures if they need to run proactive measures. And there, again, it's important that public-private cooperation in this field, as in the field of cybersecurity, is reinforced to develop the tools and to make them freely available. The big platforms have made a commitment to share some of their expertise with the smaller platforms. Some member states, as it happens the UK is one of them, have developed tools that they are making available for free. And Europol is increasingly a centre of excellence in dealing with this challenge, and it also is making its services available for free. So we're not leaving anybody on their own. We are providing a framework and the support that they will need to follow what we're setting out in this proposed legislation.
Thank you.
I wanted to add that, that for more than 2 years we are promoting the voluntary action. And under the Code of Conduct and the Cooperation Internet Forum, we have the biggest companies. We have the actors which cover around 93–94% of the market in the EU. But what about the remaining ones? And for terrorist content, we simply could not effort to leave this loophole, and that's why by this legislation we are covering all the companies, all the platforms, and we will continue the voluntary actions or activities for the other kinds of illegal content.
Gabriel,
Je voudrais aussi le rajouter, dans notre texte, c'est clairement prévu qu'on s'adresse à tous les hébergeurs de services, mais nous demandons aux autorités, lorsqu'ils vont demander des mesures proactives, de prendre en compte la capacité économique et opérationnelle du fameux fournisseur de ces services d'accueil, afin justement d'éviter des risques supplémentaires. Et un autre élément, les plateformes, les hébergeurs de services eux-mêmes vont pouvoir faire un rapport annuel sur les difficultés qu'ils rencontrent. C'est aussi une occasion qu'il faudra saisir. Mais je rappelle que dans la proposition, nous avons bien pris en considération cette spécificité des petites plateformes dans la recommandation de mesures qui doivent être mises en place et qui sont proactives. Oui, il est pris en compte leur capacité économique et opérationnelle.
Merci. Yes, please.
Hello. My name is Ines Staniv. I'm from the Bulgarian newspaper Capital. I have a particular question for Commissioner Gabriel. A few years ago, the Central Election Commission in Bulgaria was attacked by hackers, so its servers were blocked, and the Commission wasn't able to publish the election results. I just wonder how the new proposals for cooperation are going to prevent such things happening again, or how they're going to help Bulgarian authorities deal with a situation like that. And second, Bulgarian authorities then turned for help to the American FBI, not to any European authority. Is it how your proposals are going to change this situation?
Commissaire Jourová, mais c'est aussi dans notre proposition. nous n'avons pas attendu la proposition d'aujourd'hui. La commissaire Jourová a bien rappelé qu'il y a eu un groupe de travail de coordination qui a été créé avec les États membres. Ils se sont déjà réunis au mois de mars. L'idée, c'est de pouvoir présenter un rapport, ou plutôt les guidance, pour pouvoir justement se prémunir contre ce type de risque, pour pouvoir anticiper les réactions. Oui, ce travail est en cours. Il y a un groupe de coordination où les États membres prennent leur part. Maintenant, aujourd'hui, c'est la dimension européenne qui est renforcée et le volet coopération afin d'être plus rapide et plus efficace lorsque ce type de situation se produise.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? That is not the case. Then thank you very much for attending the press conference.